Okay, Wildcats, today we're looking at Tuesday, February 5th, cube and cube root inverses on page 51. If you would, update your table of contents. All right, now your table of contents are updated. Let's take a look at our notes. Cube and cube root inverses on page 51. 4 ways to find the inverse f inverse of x. 1. Graph, reflect over the y equals x line. 2. Table, switch x and y. 3. Algebraic, switch x and y and resolve for y. And 4. Composition of functions. Fog equals ft of x is equal to x, and when golf is equal to g f of x is equal to x, we can say the result of fog and golf is x, then f of x and g of x are inverses. Again, a note, when you're doing inverses, the domain and range will switch. Okay, if you would update your notes. Now your notes are updated, let's take a look at the examples, which are on page 51. Okay, find the graph the inverse of f of x. Now, I'm going to color code this. I'm going to do the inverse in yellow and the function in blue. Wildcat blue to be specific. And then I'm going to graph y equals x in pencil. Okay, so let's start by graphing that y equals x. So 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. Now the reason why I graph the y equals x line, because if they're inverses, they'll reflect over this line. Okay, so now let's graph x and f of x. Okay, so when x is -2, that would be -2 cubed plus 5, which equals -3. When x is -1, that's -1 cubed plus 5, which equals 4. When x is 0, that's 0 cubed plus 5, which equals 5. When x is 1, 1 cubed plus 5 equals 6. And when x is 2, 2 cubed plus 5 equals 13. Well, that's a valid point. It won't fit in the graph, so we're not going to worry about this point. Okay? So let's graph those points. So -2, -3, so -2. So then that's down 1, 2, 3. -1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 5. And then 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now for the f inverse of x, all we have to do is switch the x and y values. So that's -3, 4, 5, 6, and -2, -1, 0, 1. So that's -3, -1, 2, 3, -1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, 5, 0. Oop. Let me take a step back. I put 4 +1. It should be 4 -1. Okay, and I knew I made a mistake because I knew it was going to curve this way, and I knew so. Be careful when you graph your points. Okay. All right, and then 5, 0, 6, 1. So you can see here they reflect over the y equals x line. So this is definitely the inverse. All right, let's take a look at example 2. Okay, so again, I'm going to graph the function in blue and the inverse in yellow. So first, again, x and f of x. So when x is -6, we have the cube root of -6 minus 2 plus 3, and that equals 1. Now notice I was specific with the value I picked because I knew that -6 minus 2 is -8, and I knew I could take the cube root of 8, or -8. Okay? Now I'm going to have x is 1. And again, the reason why I'm picking 1 is because I know 1 minus 2 is -1. I can take this cube root of -1 plus 3 equals 2. 2, because 2 minus 2 is 0, I can take the cube root of 0. That equals 3. And then when x is 3, is 4. And when x is 10, cube root of 10 minus 2 plus 3 equals 5. Okay, so now I have the points. So -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, and 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I probably should have graphed the y equals x line first, but that's okay. We can graph it now. Y equals x, so 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Okay, now for f inverse of x, so we just switch the value. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and -6, 2, -6, 1, 2, 3, and 10. So 1, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, and 5, 10. And you can see here that they reflected over the y equals x line. So f inverse of x is definitely the inverse. All right, so that's graphically. Now let's take a look at find the inverse of each function algebraically. All right, so the first thing you want to write is f of x is y. Okay, and then you want to switch the x and y. So x equals negative parentheses y plus 3 cubed minus 4. Okay, next step is add 4 to both sides. So you have x plus 4 equals negative parentheses y plus 3 cubed You want to divide both sides by -1. Okay, then you want to take the cube root of both sides. So then you have the cube root of x plus 4 divided by -1 equals y plus 3. Okay. And then last step, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. So y equals the cube root of x plus 4 divided by -1 minus 3. Now we're almost done, but we can actually take the cube root of each of these separately. So we have y equals the cube root of x plus 4 divided by the cube root of -1 minus 3. And the reason we do that is because the cube root of -1 is -1. So we have y equals the -1 times the cube root of x plus 4 minus 3. And that one kind of looks confusing, so it'd almost be easier to write negative like that. Okay. Now, example 4, there's a mistake. That should say equals y. So first step, switch the x and y. So we have y minus 1 cubed minus 1 equals x. So we add 1 to both sides. We get y minus 1 cubed equals x plus 1. Now we're going to cube root both sides. So then you're left with y minus 1 equals the cube root of x plus 1. Add 1 to both sides. Y equals the cube root of x plus 1 plus 1. Okay. Now let's take a look at example 5. Let's see if I get it a little unblurred. All right. First things first, change f of x to y. And let's do that on both of these now. X of x to y. Switch x and y. So x equals 2 times the cube root of y plus 3 minus 1. We're going to add 1 to both sides. We get x plus 1 equals 2 times the cube root of y plus 3. Divide both sides by 2, so you get x plus 1 divided by 2 equals the cube root of y plus 3. We're going to cube both sides. So then you get x plus 1 cubed divided by 2 cubed equals y plus 3. Now, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. We're also going to note that 2 cubed is 8. So y equals x plus 1 cubed divided by 8 minus 3. All right, or I'm sorry, second to last example, example 6. Switch x and y. X equals the cube root of y minus 3. Cube both sides. So you get x cubed equals y minus 3. Add 3 to both sides. Y equals x cubed plus 3. All right. Last example. Determine by composition whether each pair of functions are inverses. Okay, so we do fog first. So we're going to put all of this into that x. Okay, so that's the cube root of x minus 3 plus 3 cubed. Now you'll see here that the negative 3 and the plus 3 don't cancel, so you can't simplify anymore. So there's nothing you can do to get x, so we stop and say that f of x and g of x are not inverses. Now, let's extend this actually to one more example. Let's make example 8. Now, let's say that f of x equals x cubed and g of x equals the cube root of x. Now let's do fog. So then again, I'm putting all of this in for x, so that's the cube root of x cubed, which that becomes a power of 1, so you get x. And now let's do g of f, which would be the cube root of x cubed which becomes the power of x. So here we could say that f of x and g of x are inverses. All right, so if you would finish up your examples, start working on your assignment, and have a wonderful Wildcat